The Georgia night pressed down like a heavy blanket, hot, still, and unrelenting. A typical summer evening in the South, thick with humidity and the faint buzz of cicadas. The air felt too heavy to breathe, and yet for Malik Jefferson, it wasn't the heat stealing his breath, it was the sirens. Just minutes earlier, Malik had been smiling behind the wheel of his modest silver sedan, the back seat filled with birthday balloons, an empty cake box, and a pile of wrapped presents sliding gently from side to side as he turned the corner onto Old Mill Parkway. His son, Josiah, had just turned 8. The party at the local Chuck E. Cheese had been loud, chaotic, and perfect. The kind of day every father wants to freeze in amber. Malik could still hear his son's laughter echoing in his ears as he replayed the night in his mind. Josiah had told him, "This was the best birthday ever, Dad." That was the kind of sentence that could carry a man for weeks. Malik wore khaki slacks and a blue polo, his Navy veteran pin clipped above his heart. At 37, he had the steady presence of a man who had seen enough of the world to know when to speak, when to listen, and when to keep both hands on the wheel. He was driving home alone. Josiah had gone home earlier with his mother, Malik's ex-wife. He'd offered to drop off the gifts later. That small decision, like so many others, felt unimportant at the time. And then came the flashing lights. Red, blue, blinding, reflecting off his rearview mirror and washing over the empty 2-lane road ahead. The sound came next. Whoop whoop. A patrol cruiser had materialized out of nowhere, its headlights harsh against the dark woods lining the road. Malik's instincts kicked in. He flicked on his hazard lights, slowed the car, rolled down his window, and placed both hands at 10 and 2. But his eyes scanned the area. No streetlights, no houses, just trees and silence. He felt his throat tighten. He'd been here before, not on this road, not with this badge number, but in this exact moment. A black man stopped in the dark with no witnesses. He remembered Florida, 2014, pulled over while still in uniform. They said he matched a description. He remembered Virginia, 2016, pulled over with Josiah in the back seat. The officer said his brake light was flickering. It wasn't. He remembered the fear, the way it lodged between his ribs and stayed there for weeks. So tonight, Malik made a decision. He would keep driving, slowly, carefully, until he reached the Valero gas station just 300 feet ahead. He knew the spot. Bright lights, cameras, clerks behind the glass. He wasn't running, he was surviving. As he crept forward, he kept one hand out the window in full view. He turned into the station, rolled to a stop beneath the brightest floodlight, and exhaled. For a split second, he thought he'd done the right thing. Then the door of the police cruiser slammed open, and a voice roared through the night. "I said stop back there. What the hell do you think you're doing?" Malik turned his head slowly. The officer was already storming toward him, heavy boots pounding asphalt, hand on his holster. White, mid-40s, square jaw, buzz cut. His badge gleamed under the gas station lights. Officer B. Harlow. The man didn't slow down as he approached. His voice was sharp, furious. "License and registration. Out of the vehicle. Hands on the hood. Now." Malik didn't argue. He reached slowly into the glove box, placed the documents on the dashboard, and then stepped out. His phone was already recording, mounted discreetly on the dash, he had learned. As he moved to the hood, palms out, he spoke calmly. "Officer, I wasn't trying to evade. I was looking for a safe, lit place to stop. There have been incidents on dark roads and—" "You don't get to choose when to obey the law," Harlow barked, stepping in close. His breath was hot, bitter with coffee. "You were given a lawful order. You ignored it. That's obstruction." Malik kept his tone even. "I signaled, I slowed, I didn't speed. I drove 300 feet to a gas station so you and I could both see each other clearly." The officer's face twisted. "Is that supposed to impress me?" "No," Malik said. "It's supposed to keep me alive." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Harlow turned and barked into his radio, requesting backup. Possible 1029, suspicious vehicle and uncooperative driver. Send 2 units. Malik's heart sank. He hadn't raised his voice, he hadn't resisted, he hadn't made any sudden movements, and yet now he was being treated like a threat. A threat for wanting light. He stared up at the fluorescent gas station canopy above him and wondered, how many black men had been accused of running when they were just trying to be seen? Officer Brian Harlow stood no more than 5 feet from Malik, his face a mask of contempt barely hiding under the veneer of authority. The streetlight above the gas station buzzed faintly, casting long shadows that danced behind the patrol cruiser. But the glare in Harlow's eyes wasn't from the floodlight, it was from a challenge he didn't expect. Out of the vehicle. Now. Harlow barked again, louder this time, as if volume would manufacture guilt. I'm already out, officer. Malik replied evenly. Hands on the hood, as requested. Harlow didn't appreciate the tone. Stepped to the front of the vehicle, hands flat, legs apart. Malik complied. You got ID on you? Yes, sir. Wallet in my right back pocket. Get it, slowly. Malik reached back, pulled it out with controlled precision, and handed it over. As Harlow flipped through the wallet, his gaze paused on the Navy veteran card tucked behind the driver's license. For a brief moment, something shifted behind his eyes. No recognition, just irritation. You in the military? He asked. 12 years, U.S. Navy. Harlow scoffed. A lot of people fake that. I don't. Well, maybe act like it then, follow orders when they're given. Malik bit his tongue. Across the lot, the Valero cashier was peeking nervously through the glass. A pair of customers at Pump 4 stopped mid-fill to watch. Their phones weren't out yet. But the situation was building toward something undeniable. Harlow circled Malik, inspecting him like he was casing a suspect on a TV show. You got any weapons on you? No, sir. Any narcotics in the vehicle? No, sir. Harlow leaned closer. Then why'd you keep driving? Malik took a breath. Because I've been pulled over on dark roads before. I've seen what happens to people who don't have the benefit of a spotlight or a camera. I wanted safety, for both of us. Harlow's jaw twitched. You don't get to decide where the law applies. I lit you up, you stop, right there, not a few hundred feet down the road. Actually, per the state's own highway safety training for citizens, stopping in a well-lit public space is advised if the initial location feels unsafe. Harlow didn't like being corrected, especially not by a black man with a calm voice and a clearer understanding of the law than most. He stepped back, touched his radio. Dispatch, Officer Harlow requesting backup. Potential code 1066, non-compliant driver. Might be under the influence. Send 2 units. Malik's eyebrows lifted. Excuse me? You heard me. You're acting erratic. You failed to yield. You're delaying a lawful stop. I signaled. I slowed down. I stopped. I just didn't want to pull over in the dark. Harlow stared at him for a beat. You think you're special? You think that pin means you get treated differently? No, Malik said. I think it means I know what my rights are. That was the wrong answer for a man like Harlow. He took a step forward, now inches from Malik's face. You raising your voice to me? I haven't raised anything but my hands. Harlow's breathing grew heavier. You keep this up, you're going to end up in cuffs for obstruction. For what exactly? Malik asked, voice still level. I haven't refused anything. I've complied. I've answered. I've been respectful. The only reason this situation feels hostile is because you made it that way, Harlow snapped. Malik met his gaze, or because I didn't bow my head. Just then, 2 more patrol cars rolled in, tires crunching the gravel. Doors opened. Officers stepped out. One of them, a Latino man in his early 30s with calm, observant eyes, glanced between Malik and Harlow. His name tag read M. Soto. He approached slowly. Everything all right here, officer? Harlow gestured at Malik. Driver failed to stop as ordered. Says he's a veteran, claims he was looking for safety. Soto glanced at Malik. Something flickered in his expression. I know you, he said slowly. Did you speak at the Veterans Roundtable last fall, Atlanta, VA? Malik nodded. Yes, I spoke about post-deployment reintegration. You were in the second row. Took notes. Soto looked at Harlow. I remember him. I know for a fact this man's a decorated vet. Harlow rolled his eyes. Yeah, well, he's not acting like one. Thinks he gets to rewrite protocol because he's afraid of the dark. Malik spoke up again. I'm asking formally why I was pulled over. What is the justification? Harlow barked. You were driving suspiciously. Veered slightly once. Maybe impaired, maybe armed. Who knows? Suspicion isn't cause, Malik said, pulling his phone from his pocket, unlocking it, and lifting it into view. Recording for my own protection. You can't do that. Yes, I can. Soto stepped between them. Officer Harlow, a quick word? They stepped a few feet away. Malik couldn't hear, but he could see Soto's body language, calm, measured, firm. Harlow's, in contrast, was tight and erratic. When they returned, Soto approached Malik. "Would you consent to a search of the vehicle, sir?" "No, not unless there's a warrant or a reason." "That's your right," Soto said. Harlow snapped. "He's hiding something. I can smell weed." Malik blinked. "That's a lie." Soto looked unsure, but cautious. He leaned toward his patrol car, discreetly pressing something. His personal body cam, not the one department issued. His own backup, one that didn't shut off mysteriously. Malik noticed, nodded slightly. Then Harlow stepped up again. "I'm doing this the hard way." He reached for the trunk handle. Malik raised his voice. "Officer, you are violating my Fourth Amendment rights. I smell something. That's probable cause. You are lying on record." Harlow leaned in, muttering, "You really want to see what I can do?" A silence fell over the gas station. The clerk inside was recording now. So were two teenagers with phones at pump 6. Soto looked around, saw all the eyes, the cameras, the light. He moved beside Harlow and whispered, "This stops here." "I'm not done." "You are now." The air pulsed with tension. Harlow's hand twitched near his belt, but he didn't reach for anything. Instead, he stepped back. "Fine." He spat. "Let him go, for now." Malik didn't move. "I want it on record that I'm not being charged." Soto looked into his camera. "No citations, no arrests. This stop is officially concluded." Only then did Malik relax his stance. But inside something hardened. This wasn't over. Not even close. Malik didn't sleep much that night. He sat on the edge of his bed, still wearing the same clothes from the confrontation, staring at the small SD card from his dashcam like it was a weapon, or a shield. Maybe both. He plugged it into his laptop. The screen blinked to life. There it was, the gas station bathed in artificial light, the side of his car gleaming with tension. The shape of Officer Harlow, storming into frame, barking commands like he was on a battlefield. Malik watched it twice, then a third time. Then hit export. He uploaded it quietly. No hashtags, no edits, no commentary. Just a short caption, 12 years in the Navy. No weapons, no charges, but still treated like a threat. He closed the laptop and went to bed. By sunrise, the internet had exploded. The video spread like wildfire. Retweets, stitches, duets, and reposts. From Reddit to TikTok, people weren't just watching. They were reacting. The calm in Malik's voice. The fire in Officer Harlow's. The setting, a well-lit gas station. A black man doing everything right and still treated like a suspect. 300 feet to safety, veteran while black, lights first, rights always. Malik's inbox overflowed. Some messages were from strangers. Others were from veterans. Black, Latino, Asian, even white. Men and women who had come home from service only to be greeted with suspicion instead of honor. A retired Army sergeant wrote, "I've been stopped on a back road in Mississippi with my uniform on. They asked me who the car belonged to. I told them, Uncle Sam. Thank you for not letting this go." The story hit the news cycle within hours. CNN ran the headline, "Veteran pulled over in Georgia. Did he do the right thing and still pay for it?" On Fox, a commentator tried to frame it as another example of anti-police hysteria. But even he had to admit the man was calm. He pulled into a lit area. What more do you want from a citizen? That's when another video surfaced. Not from Malik, from Officer Miguel Soto. It wasn't posted by him directly. It came through an anonymous tip sent to a small but fiercely independent watchdog news outlet, Civil Watch, known for publishing whistleblower footage. This wasn't the department-issued body cam footage. This was from Soto's personal backup camera, a GoPro he wore during night shifts, tucked behind his patrol vest. He'd bought it after witnessing evidence mysteriously vanish in a previous case. And this time, he had captured everything. The footage showed Officer Harlow's face contorted in fury, pacing in circles around Malik like a predator. "You thought pulling into a gas station would save you?" Harlow sneered. "You think you're smarter than me? Smells like weed. That's all I need." The camera caught it all. Soto's subtle headshake in the background. His quiet, almost whispered response, "I don't smell anything." The bombshell dropped. News outlets pounced. CNN updated its story. Leaked bodycam footage contradicts officer's statement in viral veteran stop. MSNBC hosted a legal roundtable. One panelist, a former federal prosecutor, said, "If this veteran hadn't recorded the interaction, we'd be having a very different conversation today. This is systemic. This is real." Public pressure mounted. Malik's calm but powerful voice was now quoted in headlines and memes. "I didn't stop to resist. I stopped to survive. The Oakville Police Department issued a second statement. This one, longer and more defensive, confirmed that Officer Harlow had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. That only inflamed public anger. Because people weren't calling for paperwork. They were calling for accountability. At a town hall meeting 3 days later, dozens of residents, many of them veterans, lined up to speak. A former Marine stood up in full dress blues and said, "If Malik Jefferson isn't safe, then none of us are. I fought overseas so I wouldn't have to fight for my humanity here." But the most powerful moment came not from a soldier or a lawyer or a politician. It came from an 11-year-old boy. Josiah, Malik's son. He stood next to his mother, clutching a photo of himself and his dad from the birthday party before the stop. He spoke into the mic, voice shaking but clear. "My dad didn't do anything wrong. He just wanted to come home. Please don't hurt good people like him. Please." There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including Malik's. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, a civil rights attorney named Amira Dalton had been watching everything unfold. She'd handled police misconduct cases for a decade, but something about Malik's case felt different. It wasn't just what happened, it was how he handled it. No shouting, no resistance, just the truth and evidence. She called Malik the next morning. "I know you're getting a lot of calls," she said, "but I don't want to make you a symbol. I want to help you make a change." Malik hesitated. "I'm not looking for a settlement. I'm not offering one," she said. "I'm offering a lawsuit." He let the silence hang, then finally asked, "Against whom?" "Not just Harlow," she replied. "The whole damn system that let him stay in uniform with a record of complaints." Malik exhaled. He wasn't a man who liked conflict, but this wasn't a fight. This was a reckoning. "Let's do it," he said. The same week, Georgia State Senator Camille Hastings introduced a bill into committee, the Safe Stop Act. It would protect drivers from being penalized for continuing to a well-lit public location during traffic stops, provided they signal and comply once stopped. It would also require all patrol officers to keep body cams activated during every stop and penalize any failure to preserve footage. At the press conference, Senator Hastings didn't speak alone. She stepped aside and motioned for someone else to take the mic. Malik? He didn't give a speech. He gave a story. He told the crowd what it felt like to serve overseas with pride and return home with a target on his back. He told them about the long drive that night, the breath he held behind the wheel, the heat of fear in his spine, the decision to choose light over darkness. 300 feet, he said, isn't running. It's surviving, and that survival saved my life and showed the world what happens when we're not allowed to be safe. By the end of the week, the phrase "lights first, rights always" was everywhere. Stenciled on posters, painted on sidewalks outside police departments, printed on t-shirts worn by kids who look like Josiah. And while Malik never asked for fame, he'd become something more than a headline. He'd become proof. That truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs light. The video of Malik's gas station encounter didn't just go viral. It cracked open a national conversation. People weren't shocked that it happened. What shocked them was how ordinary it felt. Within 2 days, the clip had amassed over 10 million views. But this wasn't just another trending story. This was a reckoning. Online platforms became storyboards of lived experience. Hundreds of black and brown veterans shared eerily similar encounters. Being pulled over in uniform, asked who owned their car, accused of suspicious behavior for stopping somewhere well lit, sometimes cuffed before a single question was asked. One Navy corpsman from Alabama shared, "I've done 3 tours overseas, but the most afraid I've ever been was one night outside Macon, with my daughter in the back seat." His post was shared 80,000 times. In cities across the country, posters and murals began to appear. Some bore Malik's image beneath a halo of gas station light. Others simply read, "I am Malik Jefferson." People painted it on sidewalks, spray painted it on overpasses, chalked it in schoolyards. What had happened to Malik was no longer an isolated incident. It had become a symbol. Malik, meanwhile, tried to stay out of the spotlight. He wasn't interested in being canonized. He just wanted to breathe, work, raise his son, and live with dignity. But when he was invited to speak on the daily podcast, he agreed, not to tell a story, but to tell his truth. "I didn't stop to make a point. he said. I stopped to make it home. People look at the video and think I was composed, but I was counting how many seconds it might take to explain myself before someone pulled a gun. The host didn't interrupt. And when the episode aired, neither did the listeners. Thousands of comments flooded in. Veterans, students, parents, all of them understood. At Morehouse College, students organized a rally titled "From Service to Suspicion," inviting veterans from across the Southeast to speak. A retired Air Force captain said what many were thinking: "We carried the American flag across oceans. Now we carry proof of purchase slips to show we belong in our own neighborhoods." The same week, Black-led veterans groups launched a national pamphlet campaign called Rights in Transit. It laid out step-by-step what to do when pulled over, including how to safely drive to a well-lit area. On the cover was an image of Malik, not posing, not smiling, just standing tall. In Washington, Senator Camille Hastings introduced the Safe Stop Act. Within days, it gained surprising bipartisan support. Her bill proposed legal protections for drivers who continue a short distance to safer locations when stopped by police, as long as they signal and comply. It also required full body cam documentation during all stops involving physical commands or contact. At the press conference, Senator Hastings didn't begin with legalese. She simply said, "This isn't just about race. This is about power and what happens when fear becomes policy." Behind her stood Malik, quiet, steady, and completely transformed in the public eye, from just another black driver to a symbol of calm defiance. Back in Oakville, the local police department came under scrutiny. Whistleblower emails leaked, internal complaints, allegations, buried reports. It came to light that Officer Harlow had 3 prior complaints for excessive force and racially charged language, all dismissed. None had gone to review. All had been quietly shelved. Public trust collapsed. The city council called an emergency session. Dozens of residents stood up to speak, many for the first time. A retired nurse said, "I've been afraid to drive at night for years. I thought it was just in my head. Turns out it was on everyone's dashcam." An emergency oversight panel was created, and a civilian review board was formed. Malik was invited to serve as one of its founding members. A few weeks later, Malik spoke at a youth event hosted by Next Gen Vets, a community program for teens in Oak Cliff. At first, he declined. "I'm not a role model," he said. The organizer smiled and replied, "You are now." So he went. He stood in front of a group of Black and Latino high schoolers, many with fathers in the military or brothers on probation. He didn't tell them what to think. He told them what to know. You don't have to wear a uniform to deserve respect. You don't have to be perfect to deserve protection. One student asked, "If that cop had pulled a gun, would you have fought back?" Malik looked the boy in the eye and answered, "I didn't fight with my fists, I fought with light. And that's how we win." The ripple effect was bigger than even Malik could have imagined. Rallies popped up across cities: Oakland, Chicago, Miami. Not angry, but determined. Signs read, 300 feet strong, not evasion, survival. Public school curricula added Malik's story to discussions on civic rights. Churches included his testimony and sermons. A high school debate team in Detroit used his case as a prompt for discussing constitutional search protections. Then came the music. A Grammy-winning soul singer dropped a new single titled Flashlight. It told Malik's story not as a tragedy but as a declaration. 300 feet to survive, not running, just staying alive. It climbed the charts in days. Through it all, Malik kept his head down. He didn't crave attention. He still dropped his son off at school, still went to work, still ran errands in the same old sedan. But now, when he stopped at a light, people honked, not in anger, but in recognition. Some waved, some nodded. One woman cried at a red light and mouthed, "Thank you." One evening, walking home with Josiah, the boy looked up at him and asked, "Dad, did you change the world?" Malik smiled. "Not yet," he said, "but maybe I helped it see a little clearer." The courtroom was packed. It wasn't a criminal trial. Malik wasn't on the stand as a defendant. He wasn't there to answer for a crime. He was there to hold a system accountable. The case was officially titled Jefferson vs. Oakville Police Department, filed as a civil rights lawsuit under Section 1983, alleging unlawful detainment, racial profiling, and abuse of authority. But for everyone watching, inside the courtroom and across the country, this wasn't just about legal language. It was about a moment in time. A moment caught on video, multiplied across millions of screens, and now dissected in a room where justice was supposed to live. Malik sat at the plaintiff's table beside his attorney, Amira Dalton. She wore a navy suit, no jewelry, no flash, just focus. She'd spent the last decade fighting cases just like this, but this one felt different. This one had witnesses. This one had evidence. This one had momentum. On the other side sat the city's legal team, flanked by brass from the Oakville Police Department. Officer Brian Harlow, no longer in uniform, sat expressionless, staring straight ahead. He didn't speak to reporters. He didn't smile. He just sat there like he was waiting for this all to blow over. It wouldn't. The prosecution opened with the basics: footage of the stop, audio of Harlow's threats, testimony from Officer Soto, who confirmed under oath that he'd activated his personal body camera that night because I didn't trust what was happening. Dalton called him to the stand. "Officer Soto," she asked, "why did you feel the need to use your personal recording device?" He didn't hesitate. "Because I've seen things get erased, I've seen reports rewritten, and I wasn't going to let that happen again." "And did you believe Mr. Jefferson was a threat?" "No," Soto said firmly. "He was calm, compliant, measured. He was trying to stay safe, that's all." The defense tried to rattle him. They brought up department policy, chain of command, alleged procedural errors. But Soto didn't flinch. He just looked at Malik and nodded. Then came the bombshell. Dalton introduced a piece of evidence the public had never seen: an internal complaint log, 3 formal reports filed against Officer Harlow over the past 7 years. All involved black drivers. All included allegations of excessive force, verbal abuse, and detainment without probable cause, and all had been dismissed. "Suppressed," Dalton said to the judge, "silenced by bureaucracy." She brought in a whistleblower, a former records assistant, who testified, off the record, that Harlow's complaints were flagged by the department's own misconduct algorithm, but never escalated for review. The courtroom murmured. The judge banged the gavel, but the damage was done. Harlow's clean image was no longer intact. On the 3rd day of the trial, the defense called Malik to the stand. Their tactic was clear: undermine his credibility, suggest he was being dramatic. He exaggerated for social media attention, that he was seeking fame or financial gain. Dalton stood beside him as he took the oath. He answered every question with clarity. "Did you raise your voice during the stop?" the defense asked. "No." "Did you resist?" "No." "Why did you keep driving after the lights came on?" "Because the road was dark, and in this country, too many black men die in the dark." That was the soundbite that made the evening news. But the true twist came just before closing arguments. Dalton stood and introduced a surprise witness. There was a ripple of whispers across the courtroom as an older white man in a dark suit stepped forward. Tall, clean-shaven, medals lining the inside of his blazer. "Please state your name for the court," Dalton said. "Captain William Granger," he replied. "Retired. United States Navy." "Captain," Dalton continued, "do you know the plaintiff, Mr. Malik Jefferson?" Granger nodded. "I do. I was his commanding officer for 4 years." The courtroom stilled. "And in your opinion, how would you describe Mr. Jefferson?" Granger turned and looked at Malik. "He was one of the finest officers I ever served with. Smart, calm under pressure, always respected the chain of command, and more importantly, respected the mission. He didn't panic, he didn't provoke, he protected. He was the kind of sailor you wish you had 10 more of." "And how do you feel seeing him here today?" Granger's voice wavered for the first time. "I'm angry. Because if a man like that can be treated like a criminal for trying to be safe, then how many others are out there without cameras, without medals, without anyone to vouch for them?" Malik blinked hard. The jury watched in silence. The closing arguments were swift. Dalton didn't lean on outrage. She leaned on facts. Malik Jefferson didn't escalate. He didn't resist. He didn't provoke. He pulled into the light, and the response to that simple act was abuse, suspicion, and intimidation. She turned to the jury. "This case isn't just about one night. It's about what we allow under the name of law, what we let happen in the shadows, and who we believe deserves to feel safe in the country they've served." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. The Oakville Police Department had violated Malik Jefferson's Fourth Amendment rights. Officer Brian Harlow had acted with willful disregard for protocol and citizen safety. Damages awarded, $2.3 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Gasps filled the room. One reporter whispered, "This just changed everything." But Malik didn't react. He stood, shook Amira's hand, thanked the judge, and walked out of the courtroom into a world that finally saw him, not as a headline, but as a human being. Outside, a crowd had gathered: reporters, activists, veterans, parents. Kids holding up signs with his name in bold letters. Someone handed him a mic. Cameras clicked. He took a breath. "I didn't come here today for revenge. I came for reckoning. For the fathers, the sons, the veterans, the teenagers who know what it's like to be stopped, not for what they did, but for what they look like. This verdict isn't the end. It's just the light switch." He stepped down, and the crowd erupted. 6 months had passed since the verdict. Malik never spent a dime of the settlement money. Instead, he used his voice. The day after the trial, he turned down interviews with every major network. He didn't want a book deal. He didn't want to be packaged into a soundbite. He wanted something that lasted longer than headlines. He wanted change. So he launched an initiative called Lights First, Rights Always. It wasn't just a slogan, it became a mission. The program offered free legal workshops for drivers across the country, teaching them what to do during traffic stops, how to protect themselves legally, and how to safely assert their rights. It partnered with local community centers, churches, and even some police departments. Malik didn't frame it as anti-police. He framed it as pro-survival. "This isn't about hate," he told a room full of high school students. "It's about clarity, about being ready when the world isn't fair, and still walking out with your dignity." Officer Brian Harlow, meanwhile, was no longer a cop. After the lawsuit, an internal affairs probe revealed that 3 more complaints, never disclosed, had been filed against him during his career. His badge was revoked, he resigned. No press conference, no apology. But Malik didn't celebrate that. He had already moved forward. One of the most unexpected invitations came from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. They asked Malik to deliver a guest lecture on civic duty and moral courage. As he stood at the podium before a hall of cadets, all in crisp uniforms, he looked both at ease and out of place. "I wore the same uniform many of you wear now," he began. "And I believed then, as I do now, that service doesn't end when the deployment does. Sometimes your greatest act of service is to speak truth at home." He paused, letting the weight settle. "I didn't want to be pulled over that night. I didn't want to become a symbol. But you don't always choose the moment. Sometimes the moment chooses you." He stepped down to a standing ovation. Back in Oakville, the community had changed in small, quiet ways. The city council passed a local version of the Safe Stop Act. Officer training programs now include de-escalation scenarios specifically involving veterans. Dashcam footage was stored with third-party access, reducing the risk of tampering. It wasn't a revolution, but it was a beginning. One night, as Malik drove home from another speaking engagement, he pulled into a familiar gas station, the same one where it all began. He stepped out, walked to the pump and paused. The lights above buzzed softly. The air was warm, calm. He looked around. No sirens, no voices yelling at him to put his hands up. Just ordinary life, just light. A teenage girl walked by with her younger brother. She stopped. "Are you?" He smiled gently. "Yes. Thank you," she said. "My dad talks about you. He's a vet too." Malik nodded. "Tell him I said thank you for his service, and for coming home." Later that week, at a community event in Atlanta, Malik was asked a question during a Q&A. A young boy, no older than 10, stood up and asked, "Mr. Jefferson, were you scared?" Malik took a breath. He looked down for a moment, then answered honestly. "Yes," he said, "but I didn't let fear decide who I was. I chose light. I chose to stand. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do." I didn't ask to be stopped that night. I didn't ask to be followed home by headlines. I only asked for one thing: light. And that light, it didn't just reveal the truth about one officer. It revealed the truth about all of us. That's my story, but it's not just mine anymore. It belongs to every voice that won't be silenced. Every driver who chooses safety over submission, every veteran who comes home and demands to be treated with the same honor they gave. He looked at the audience. "We're not here to run, we're here to rise."